Hello everybody and welcome back to more political chatter. In this video we will be talking about the 2024 Ohio Senate race and the current Republican race for that GOP nomination heading into November. So I can't stress enough how important Ohio is for the Senate, just to highlight the importance of this state. Looking at the states that we really do know for sure how they're going to go, Democrats are at 43 and Republicans are at 50. But as of right now, we have about 7 states that we aren't certain how they're going to go. But we do know that the Democrats lead in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Nevada. In those 5 states, they are really agreed by the vast majority of political analysts to be favorable towards the Democrats. So that narrows things up a lot. And Montana and Ohio are going to be the two most important states. Let's say John Tester in Montana, the Democratic incumbent, loses. That puts Republicans at 51, Democrats at 48. To narrow the gap, Democrats would have to win the state of Ohio. But what if Montana goes blue? What if John Tester wins re-election in the state of Montana? And what if Joe Biden wins the presidency? Then Ohio becomes so important, because if Sherrod Brown in the state of Ohio, that Democrat running for re-election, is re-elected, that puts Democrats at 50 seats and Republicans at 50 seats. And if Biden wins re-election and there is a Democratic vice president, Kamala Harris, who cast that tie-breaking vote, Democrats actually keep control of the Senate. But let's say, Biden doesn't win the presidency or whatever. Ohio is a key path for the Republicans to flip the Senate red. So looking at the 2024 Ohio Senate race, we do have our Democratic nominee. It is Sherrod Brown. I believe he's running for his third term. He is a more popular senator. He is a progressive in a red state like Ohio. I mind you, Ohio voted for Donald Trump by 8% in 2020. So obviously, Sherrod Brown does have a very uphill climb. Um, and that is why this is such a closely watched Senate race, because, we have this Democratic incumbent in such a red state, and it will be very interesting to see if he would be able to hold on. And it would, tell us a lot about populism, because Sherrod Brown is definitely more on the populist side. So, um, as for the Republican Party, there are really only three candidates at all, but three major candidates. That being Matt Dolan, who ran actually in the Republican primary for Senate 2 years ago in 2022, where J.D. Vance won that. Matt Dolan is a state senator, and again, he was a candidate in 2022. Just to check up on how he did here. Um, where are the results? So J.D. Vance won with 22% of the vote, or 32%, sorry. Josh Mandel came in second place with 23%, and right behind was Matt Dolan with just under a quarter of the vote. So just to give you an idea of Matt Dolan's performance, as you can see here, he does better in the urban areas, and Matt Dolan is seen as the most moderate candidate of the three. He has been endorsed by the governor, Mike DeWine, who I guess you could say is less conservative than many Republicans today. But he has really been attacked for his more moderate stances by more conservative Republicans. And then you've got Frank LaRose, who was the favorite in this race for quite a while, but he has actually fallen dramatically recently. Frank LaRose is the Secretary of State of Ohio. And then you have kind of the surprise candidate in this race, I guess you could say, Bernie Moreno, who is by far the most conservative candidate in this race. He was endorsed by Donald Trump. I believe he briefly ran in 2022. I don't even think he made it to election day, if I was correct. Yeah, he didn't even make it to election day. He withdrew from the race before voting even took place. So, as you can see there. So, um, Bernie Moreno is now back this time. I mean, look, he's only a car dealership owner and the father-in-law to Max Miller, who is a, ooh, okay, creepy, who is a current U.S. representative from Ohio. So, for whatever reason, he has actually gained a lot of attention in this race. I'm not even sure where it like began, why he got attention in the first place, considering that he is a very little known candidate. But kind of recently, a couple months ago, Donald Trump endorsed Bernie Moreno, and that changed everything. That put Bernie Moreno obviously at a top, as the favorite, or definitely at least the second favorite in this Republican primary currently. And you saw in 2022 in Ohio, Josh Mandel was the favorite for a lot of the primary, and then we saw Donald Trump endorse J.D. Vance, and that propelled J.D. Vance to victory in this Republican primary, and he won by 10%. But this one is a lot closer. Looking at fundraising, just to give you an idea of this race, um, Matt or Bernie Moreno, let's see. So Matt Dolan has by far the most cash on hand. He is endorsed by the governor. He is endorsed by the first lady. He is endorsed by the mayor of East Palestine, Ohio, where that train derailment took place. So Matt Dolan is running a very serious campaign this time around. He has $4.8 million cash on hand. He's raised $9 million. And while Bernie Moreno only has 2 million, almost on the dot, just above $2 million. Um, and Frank LaRose, as I was saying before, is kind of out of it at this point. He only has $700,000 cash on hand. So, even though, uh, we saw, even though Bernie Moreno has that critical Trump endorsement, has the support of the president, the same president whose endorsement propelled J.D. Vance previously last time around in this race, while it was looking like a Matt Dolan versus Josh Mandel race. We This time around, Matt Dolan is running a much more serious campaign. He is getting much more attention and really support overall. As we see in polls and everything, he is really getting a lot of support in this race. So the Trump endorsement does not mean everything in this race. Surprisingly, this time around, it is much different from 2022, and it'll be very interesting to see how this goes on primary day, which I forgot to mention is Tuesday. So this primary is happening in 3 days, March 19th. So this is my final prediction sort of video. And yeah, as I said, this will be very interesting to see who wins this primary, because really it's like 50-50 right now between Matt Dolan and Bernie Moreno, and it really gives us insight to Donald Trump's power, in the Republican Party. Sorry, we saw, of course, we have seen Donald Trump absolutely dominate his opponents in the presidential primary, and another measure of a party leader's power is to see how their endorsements matter, and how their endorsees perform. So that will be extremely important um, in this Republican primary. Looking at some polling numbers now, there was a poll released, I believe, um, yesterday, sorry, and, well, sorry, I did not mean to go to that. I mean to go to, not this either, jeez, I meant to go to Republican primary polls, and then we'll head into the general election, which is what, that other thing that I pulled up was. But as you can see, in the beginning of this race, May, June, July, October, of 2023, Frank LaRose held a lead. I mean, in all of these polls, Frank LaRose led. In the beginning in May 2023, it wasn't even a contest. It was 24 to 11 to 6. And then it starts to get a little closer. I believe Matt Dolan announced about this time during June or May, somewhere around that time. And you do see it get a little closer. But still, I mean, these are really good numbers for Frank LaRose, and for good reason. He's the Secretary of State, very well known. He leads by 10 points here. He leads by 17 points here. He leads by 24 points here. So he was performing well. And then the Trump endorsement came, and that was in November of 2023. And kind of expectedly, Bernie Moreno jumps, skyrockets. I mean, not really, but you get the idea. In a three-person race, you know, I guess you could say he skyrocketed. But now, in November, he's at 15 to Frank LaRose's 14 to Matt Dolan's 13. So this was the point that we knew that this would be a close race and one that we had to keep our eye on. So Bernie Moreno won another poll, Frank LaRose was able to win another poll, and then Bernie Moreno for quite a while. But what we have seen only in this month, really, starting at the very end of February, is that for whatever reason, I'm really not even sure why, to be completely honest with you. Maybe it was because of more commercials and more spending. But Matt Dolan skyrockets to first place. He has never led a poll until now, until mid-March. He led his first poll, March 7th to 10th. The 10th was 6 days ago. So when this poll was released, that was the first time Matt Dolan won a single poll this entire campaign season. And today we see, not today, but this poll conducted from the 13th to the 15th. The 15th was yesterday. Had Matt Dolan at 31%, Bernie Moreno at 29%, and Frank LaRose at 19%. When that was released a few days ago, Matt Dolan at 33, Bernie Moreno at 31, Frank LaRose at 23. When that was released that same day as the one I just said, Bernie Moreno leading at 22%, Matt Dolan at 18, Frank LaRose at 16. So this one's interesting. Survey USA, I believe I remember seeing them like with a horrible rating. So I don't know how. Wait, who is the other for? So I don't know how accurate that one is. I would take that one with a grain of salt. I don't think that Matt Dolan will do nearly as bad as 18%. But regardless, all these polls demonstrate is that this will be a very tight race between Matt Dolan and Bernie Moreno. Frank LaRose is out of it at this point. And then looking at the general election now, it does matter so much, this primary, because as this Politico article highlights, the GOP is worried that this primary could destroy their chances in November. And this is not a new concept. This is not some, unproven theory that people are just brushing aside. There were countless examples in 2022 where Republicans fumbled because of their primary. I'm not saying that Dr. Oz would have won this race if he won won the primary by a lot more, but looking at his primary, it was so divided. You had Dr. Oz. You had virtually a three-way race. Dr. Oz won by just about 900 votes out of like almost 1.5 million votes cast. It was 31.21% to David McCormick's 31.14 and Kathy Barnett's 24.66. And so this was a very divided, very heated primary between many candidates. Others were seen as top contenders at some point, and then some, gained momentum, some dropped, dipped down. And anyway, what it resulted in was John Fetterman, the Democrats, or should I say, low Republican enthusiasm for Dr. Oz because of how nasty this primary was, and Democrats were able to flip this critical Senate seat. And there were multiple examples of this. In Arizona, there was a very tight two-person race between Blake Masters and Karen Taylor Robson, and Blake Masters ended up losing by a pretty good amount. But I'm not saying that this same thing is happening across GOP primaries, Senate primaries in 2024. I'm not saying that, because they did learn their lesson. They definitely learned their lesson. Still looking at Pennsylvania, this time around, Dave McCormick, that second place candidate to Dr. Oz, is running again, and he has been endorsed by the Pennsylvania Republican Party. He doesn't have a single serious opponent in that primary. So they have learned their lesson, overall, except in the state of Ohio. This is the only one where there is a very tight, heated, divided Republican primary, and it could very well cost them in November, as this article points out. Now, looking at the candidates, Matt Dolan, in a hypothetical matchup, leads Sherrod Brown by 2%. Bernie Moreno, when he is put up, Sherrod Brown wins by 4%. So that is a 6-point overperformance for Dolan compared to Moreno. And then Frank LaRose loses to Sherrod Brown by 5%. Now, I don't know if any of these candidates could beat Sherrod Brown, and I'm not just looking at these polls in particular either. But what I do know is that Matt Dolan would be the best candidate to put up. Bernie Moreno is far too conservative. I mean, just to give you an idea of his weakness as a candidate, Democrats are running ads basically for Bernie Moreno to encourage Republican primary voters to vote for him because they know that he is the weakest candidate. He is far too conservative, and Sherrod Brown could attack him for a lot of issues. He could attack the heck out of Bernie Moreno and absolutely crush him, probably. Considering that Sherrod Brown is the incumbent senator, and this is going to be a close race regardless who the Republicans put up. I also know that Frank LaRose has fumbled in this primary, and that he won't be the nominee, so we don't need to talk about that hypothetical. But I can say with certainty that Matt Dolan is a better candidate than Bernie Moreno. I think that he is not moderate enough to depress the Republican turnout. His candidate strength himself won't do that. The divided primary very well may do that, but he himself is won't discourage too many more conservative Republicans to turn out for him. And then what was I even talking about? But he would definitely get more of these suburban, more independent voters, right? More centrist voters who may, who may like Sherrod Brown, but they're unhappy with the Democrats' performance in the Oval Office, with Joe Biden's performance as president. He is the guy who could win over those types of voters. So I definitely think that Matt Dolan is the best candidate, but that doesn't matter until, we have a Republican nominee. So who do I think will win this Republican primary for Senate? Well, definitely not Frank LaRose, as I said. He is out of it. And honestly, it is going to be, I think, so close between Matt Dolan and Bernie Moreno. It is really hard to say, but I would, following all of these endorsements and everything, and just because Bernie Moreno isn't well known enough, Matt Dolan has already run this before. People know him. I think, and I could definitely be wrong on this, but I actually think that Matt Dolan will pull out a very, very, very narrow victory, and that he will be the Republican nominee for Senate, which really changes the race. For quite a while, I've been expecting um, Bernie Moreno to be the nominee. So, thank you all for watching this video. I really hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you guys again next time. Thanks for watching.